here we are in Motion Builder, and we're going to go ahead and open up our FBX. So let's go ahead and go to Local Render Jobs, go to Testa 2 here, and FBX, and here's the FBX we exported out of Cinema. Should load pretty quickly. We can go ahead and bring in the C4D animation take, that's fine. Alright, so here we are in Motion Builder, and everything seems to have imported just fine. As I mentioned in the last Motion Builder tutorial I did a long while ago, Motion Builder objects usually come in, or objects from Cinema 4D anyway, imported to Motion Builder typically come in with like no materials. It's very rare that the materials come in here fine, and honestly I'm not really using it for its pre-visualization properties too much. So objects being fully looking like they did in Cinema 4D isn't really a problem for me. However, if we go to our textured look, it takes quite a bit of time for it to actually go ahead and load up and get everything kind of sort of working, and then really slow moving through my viewport. It looks like my textures came in just fine for this particular scene. I'm going to work without it though. So in this particular case, you know, everything worked out really nicely, but more advanced DAZ characters, particularly ones that have like luminance maps and different things like that, oftentimes they won't come in as nicely, or you might see a character that's fully white, you know, just have like white face. In that particular case, you can always go into the scene, go into the character. So this is like the null that we had in Cinema 4D, and here's the character's mesh. If we go in here, we can go into different materials, and say the foot material was like really white or something. More than likely, it's probably going to be your emissive property here. That would be the culprit. It would be like 111, and you would get, as you can see here, I'm getting white foot going on here, you know, and that could be pretty annoying, you know. So usually I just turn these properties down, double click, turn all these down to 0, and I usually take care of the emissiveness, you know, and make it at least bearable to animate in here. So anyway, all that out of the way, we're going to come in here and we're going to go ahead and load up my Genesis template. So we're going to go ahead and merge in, and we're going to go to Local Render Jobs, and we're going to go to Graphic Design Assets, and we're going to go to 3D Modeling, and my Motion Builder naming templates, and I've created a Genesis naming template. I have to check back and see if I've actually done a tutorial that actually talked about this. I recall talking about this in one of my most recent previous tutorials, but I could be mistaken. Alright, and I loaded up, guys. So basically what I did was I created a character in another scene, and I loaded up a Genesis character of some sort, and I basically went through my first tutorial where I showed you guys how to characterize a character, and I just dropped the different required bones into different required areas. I went a little further than that with this one, as I went into the auxiliary, and I've dropped in some auxiliary bones here. Went into the spine, I've dropped some extra spine bones, and went into the left hand, dropped all the left hand bones, and dropped all the right hand bones, and so forth and so on. So I really went through and I've dropped in just about every single Genesis bone into a respective spot here in the Motion Builder control rig. So you can go ahead and actually rename this, and we're going to call this Testa to character, char for short, and there we go. That way, if you have to merge in another one of my templates, for a second character, there won't be any conflict as far as naming goes. Motion Builder is very particular about objects having different names, so you got to be careful with that. Ultimately, in the load menu, you can use the namespace to avoid conflicts. All right, and then all we need to do is just drag the character object onto Testa and characterize. Do a biped, and now she's characterized. And then let's create a control rig and FKIK, and she's good to go. All right. So if we grab one of our effectors, we should be able to move her now. And let's see. Running into an issue with being able to move her, so let's figure out what's going on here. We're on selection. Let's switch to body parts. And there we go. We've got movement. So yeah, if you see that you can't move your character, it's constrained for whatever reason. If you switch from this selection mode here to body parts, you should be able to move your character around. And so, yep, that's good to go. Now, what we're going to run into a little bit later is going to be a small issue. Oh, it could be a really big issue. Where we're going to have a problem with our hands. Now that we've got our hands characterized and they're part of the actual rig, we can run into an issue where some of our motion graphics files will contort the hands in really weird ways, and in my last animation that became a really big problem. I had to go into Cinema 4D and try to fix things. So easy way to allow us to be able to do it in Motion Builder, be able to get the hands posed in Motion Builder and all this stuff without having to go back into Cinema 4D later, would be to give ourselves kind of sort of a T-pose for the hands. Now the typical way you would create a normal everyday T-pose would be to go in your pose controls panel here under resources, and you could click once and then click again here in some black space, and that's going to select all your controls. And then if you were to create a pose this way, you would get a T-pose that you could go back to pretty easily using the pose controls. I find, however, that this doesn't really work as well as I would like it to. Mostly it doesn't give me a T-pose in the hands, and that's typically because it doesn't really go into the hierarchy here and actually pick all the hand bones like you would expect it to. Now, an easy way to do this would be to go in here and to go ahead and select those bones, and then you would have that pose. However, that doesn't translate very well to story. Even though you would be able to go ahead and copy the pose into your story and kind of sort of use it, I find that it's easier to actually create a take that has a full T-pose on it. So if we go ahead and rename this C4D animation take, so let's just double click the take, bring up its properties, then double click here and go ahead and rename it to T-pose. We can create a singular take that is actually the full T-pose. So coming in here, we can pick any one of our effectors. I'm going to pick the root effector here, the hips. And with it selected, I'm going to go over here and select full body. So I'm actually keying the whole body on this keyframe. So this is going to be all of the controls in my control rig are going to get a keyframe. And I'm going to go ahead and hit key. And that's going to give me a T-pose that is on all of the controls in the control rig. You see how they're highlighted kind of sort of white because we're in full body mode here for the hands. So by hitting these little drill downs, you can go into the hands, and by hitting these little drill downs, you can go into the feet. and they've got kind of a sort of a white border selection on them because we're in full body mode. We go out of full body mode, you see that they become more of a sort of gray. So that's going to give us a full body key. That means every single effector and FK control on this rig has got a key on it. And that'll be our T-pose. We can use that later in story to get back to our T-pose, or to isolate certain areas and have certain areas assume the T-pose. It's going to be very useful for the hands because it's going to allow us to basically go back to this default hand pose, and then manipulate our hands as we see fit with a lot of control. Alright, but what we're going to want to do though is we're not going to want to mess up our T-pose, so we can go ahead and create a new take. And copy data from current take, new take? No. So we're going to create a new empty take, and we're going to use this to do our full animation on. Alright. So the great thing about Cinema 4D here, or Motion Builder here, is the fact that you can create multiple takes, and each take can have a totally different animation on it. And then, using Story, you can do some really powerful things like take different takes and put them onto the story timeline and non-linearly blend them together, as we will do later with the hands. Alright, so we can go ahead and rename this take and call it Katana Swing Flip or something like that. It's a pretty apt name. We're going to do a Katana Swing Flip. And we're good to go. We're ready. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Story. So we'll hit Story here. And we're going to go ahead and right click in this gray area here at the bottom of our Story panel. And we're going to insert a character animation track. The character that we want to animate, or we want to have story control, is going to be Testa 2 character. Alright. So now she's being controlled by story. As long as these blue buttons are on, which we can turn them off, but as long as they're on, she's being controlled by the story system and not by the take system. So the take system right now, right here, if we return story off, has no animation on it. Now what we want to do is we want to actually have her walk up to the table, and then we're going to have her pick up the katana, and then we're going to have her do a flip. Okay, and we're going to do this in stages. So first we want to get the walk right. Then we're going to want to animate the hand motion outside the story. We're going to want to use Motion Builder's advanced keyframing techniques and constraint techniques outside of story mode to actually manipulate the sword into her hands. And then once that's done, we're going to want to bring that take that we did in the Motion Builder system back into story so that we can blend in a flip onto the end of it. So pretty exciting stuff. Let's begin. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and insert an animation file. And we're going to go into our motion capture. And if you watched my first Motion Builder tutorial, you'll know how to actually create these FBXs that have a whole bunch of animation takes in them. I'm using number 7 from the Carnegie Mellon BBH library. Number 7 has some really good walks. So we're going to go ahead and open that up, and we're going to load ourselves up a walk. All right. And there we go. We've got her walking. Go ahead and animate. She's walking pretty nicely. Cool. All right. Now, just to give myself a little bit of fun capability a little bit later, in a Marvelous Design tutorial that I intend to do at some point in the next few months, if not the next few weeks, I'd like to be able to put some dynamic clothing on her, and I'd like to use the clothing system to be able to do so. However, when you're talking about dynamics, you need to do a run-up animation so that the clothes don't get all garbled up and messed up from a certain jerky movement from the character animation. So basically, in Clo, the character would basically start, or in Marvel's Designer, the character would start out in a T-pose. And then what we want to do is we want her to slowly shift into the walk animation so the clothes aren't just like sitting here and they're just all garbled up because the character jumped from one place to another. So this is where our T-pose comes into play. We can go ahead and switch the take over to the T-pose, and it's not going to affect story at all. But now what we can do is we can insert in the current take, and the current take that we're inserting in is the T-pose take. So now we have this T-pose, this flat T-pose that we've inserted in, and we've also got this walk clip. So this is really cool. We can use the motion builder animation system and create a keyframed skeletal animation and then import it in and use it with motion capture as well. Very powerful stuff. So we're going to go ahead and take this T-pose and shrink it down quite a bit. Basically want to give Marvel's Designer enough time, not too much time, but a good little bit amount of time to go ahead and calculate out the initial state of the clothes before we start her walking. So maybe about a second. And we're working 30 frames per second right now, so we'll just extend this out to 30 frames. We'll move the walk cycle off the beginning of the animation a little bit. And so we'll give the clothes about a second to settle, and then we'll give them about a half a second to transition into the walk. So now we have what's called a run-up animation, where she actually is able to run up to a state where the clothes are nicely settled on her body. You know, they'll nicely settle over time and follow her body motion and get nicely settled so that everything looks really good in the walk animation. You know, the clothes will nicely sway on her hips and stuff like that. So that's how you would create a run-up animation. And it's very, very useful. Whether you're using Cinema 4D Dynamics or Maya Dynamics or whatever, these run-up animations will allow you to not have a really herky-jerky dynamic simulation going. This T-pose take will also come in very, very handy a little bit later when we try to correct this bad hand motion that we have going on right now. So as you can see, we've already got, you know, a problem with our hands. Our hands are smashed. They're just ruined right now due to the motion capture. You know, they're very, very unnatural looking. And what we can do is we can create a subtrack in here to actually clean up the hands. So actually, we might as well go ahead and do that right now. There are a few other issues. Her head is not exactly where we would like her focus to be. She's kind of just focused straight ahead. She's got like this really strong poise as she's moving towards the katana. We'd actually like her to probably look at the katana. So, you know, we can fix all of this in story and give ourselves kind of a really good looking motion capture, all prior to actually baking this down and actually going to the motion builder system and adding even more polish to it. So let's start with those hands. So here's how we can use the T-pose take to clean up these hands. We can go ahead and right click on our character track, and we can add a character override track, subtrack. So you can see how you got a little hierarchy, and this is the top of the tree, and then we've got leaf here for the subtrack. we can go ahead and bring up our inspector area a little bit, our story window up a little bit, and we can go ahead and drill down on this. So what we can actually do here is we can take the current take, the T-pose take, and we can go ahead and insert it right here into the subtract. And as an override layer, what this is going to do is it's going to actually override the whole animation and basically put us in T-pose permanently. Override all the effectors. So actually I'm using Alt right click here to go ahead and zoom out on my timeline so I can see the whole T-pose take. And I'm going to go ahead and use Alt right click, and I'm just moving my mouse to go ahead and zoom back in. And what we actually want to do is we want to actually override the walk cycle to a T-pose, but we don't want to override all of the bones. We only want to override a very specific subset of bones, the hand bones. So what we can come in here now and do is in our subtract we can select the track content, and we can actually remove, I think by using these dots here. No, the dots will actually allow us to select what we want to actually manipulate. So what we can do here is we can actually come in here and select this internal area here where it says like Testa 2 character, etc. And you can go ahead and hit the remove all button and remove everything from the subtract. So the subtract is not affecting, it's not overriding anything. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to come in now and specifically select certain things for it to manipulate. So come into our scene here, and this character control reference is actually the control rig. So this is actually Motion Builder's powerful control rig system. So if we come in here, we can specifically tell it which areas we want to affect. So actually I want to affect everything under the hand. I don't want to affect the hand effectors themselves because I want them to move and control the arms and control the wrist, but I do want to affect the thumb effector, the index effectors, ring finger effectors. I want to affect all those effectors. And then I also want to go into the hips themselves. So these are your FK controls. And I want to come in here, and it's all kind of similarly named like Cinema 4D's is. So, you know, we're drilling down to spine 1 would be like abdomen 1, and then this is abdomen 2, and then we need to go into the left shoulder. We need to go to the left forearm, so forth and so on. And underneath the hand, we actually want to just go ahead and check these two here. And that's going to basically grab the whole entire hierarchy for the hand. Vice versa on the right shoulder. I'm going to come in here, go under the hand, and grab all the hand bones there too. And make sure everything else is selected the way we want. And basically what we've done is we've used an override layer here in story to T-pose out the hands, you know, and prevent the motion capture from corrupting our hands, while at the same time allowing us to have motion capture on the rest of the figure. So that's pretty awesome. If you've got your own control rig and it happens to have a lot of toes and stuff as well, then the toes might get gnarled up as well. And so you could use that to clean up the toes, as well as any other bones that you don't want to be affected by your motion capture. So depending upon the motion capture, you may want to hand keyframe certain parts of your character, and you can do that with the override layer. That's pretty impressive. All right, we're probably going to create another override layer because we can use, or actually in this particular case, we're going to create an additive layer. So add a subtract and add an additive layer. And what we'll do is we'll turn on this little key here. And what this key will allow us to do is it'll allow us to actually keyframe in story, something that's normally the dominion of the non-story mode of Motion Builder. And with our ability to be able to key now, we can actually go ahead and grab the head effector, and we can have her actually point at the, we can actually have her head point at the katana. So she actually looks like she's walking with a purpose to get to that katana. And let's open up this subtract and see why it may or may not be actually affecting what we want it to affect. Let's see. So if we drag this keyframe out over the whole animation here, and specifically we want this additive layer to only affect really the head. So we could do that, but it doesn't really matter. I think what our issue is here with the head is the fact that we don't have our auto keyframe turned on. So yeah, when I'm keying in Motion Builder, I love to turn this on because then I can just manipulate the effectors and I don't have to worry about actually hitting the key button a whole bunch of times. So we go ahead and do this. We should receive a key, especially if we have it affect that character. Still running into a problem. Okay, so let's figure this out. There we go. Now we're getting a key. Alright, so I just had to reselect the character, turn on, turn off the key, just, I don't know, just mess with the system a little bit to get it to recognize. I also made sure that it was actually targeting her character here. It's funny because on this one it's not really targeting the character, and yet at the same time it's working, so, you know, but pretty much now we've got a keyframe in story, and we're basically manipulating our motion capture now to suit our purposes. However, I am working a little bit backwards here because really we don't want her to walk from this angle. We actually want her to walk from over here. So this brings me to another point here. Reference, 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 reference. Always use real world references, and always, you know, script. Always come up with an idea of what your animation is going to look like prior to actually going in and actually doing it. So what I did was I actually acted this scene out and recorded it on my iPhone. So what we can do is we've got it here in a folder called Reference. So under Testa 2. And here's typically, as a naming convention, my reference folder would be where I would put art I may have found on Google that, you know, inspired me for this particular character, or, you know, different scenes that, you know, might be inspirational or might be good reference. And then I'll just put all that stuff in here, and I'll use it throughout the project as templates and different things to allow me to kind of sort of figure out where I want to go with my scene. So this also would be the spot where you probably put your PSD storyboards and different things like that. But what we can do is just drag the video right into the Motion Builder viewport here. And it's going to let you either add it as a camera foreground, camera background. You can add it as a video plane. Video plane's kind of fun because we can just move it around and kind of sort of get it to where we want it to be. In most of my older scenes, I like to use the camera. This would basically add as a texture to the producer perspective camera, and it'd just be in the background there, allowing you to work on it. We're going to go ahead and use video plane here, and it's going to come in as a video plane, and just like any other object, we can go ahead and just kind of sort of rotate that around and move it, and you know, use it just as a plane of reference. So what I have here is a broken piece of a coat hanger that I just, you know, picked up and I kind of used as a as a sword kind of sort of object. And if we go ahead and play this back, and go ahead and let's move it out the way a little bit so Testa doesn't kind of sort of occlude it. I think we could actually go ahead and mute Testa story track. So come over here and just mute the tracks, and that'll shut her down. And alright, so just using my tripod, since it wasn't, you know, really since I didn't really have a good table to work with, you know, I just come pick up the sword and just slice, you know. So come in here. So basically, as part of the animation here where I slice is kind of sort of what I want to go for. So just using basically that arm motion there, you know, I'm going to go ahead and replicate that on my character, and I'm going to get a really good reference for that because I used an actual human actor to actually do this animation. So there we go. Alright, so let's come in here and just drag this back, and with that reference set up, let's go ahead and finish up with the walk cycle here, the initial steps of this.